Square Enix adopts new customer harassment policy. The Final Fantasy studio now can deny products and services to players whose interaction with an employee exceeds socially acceptable behavior or is harmful. Okay, so a lot of people have been talking about this as in like Square Enix adopted this out of nowhere and decided, yeah, we're the ones that are just going to sue people if they don't like Tifa's boobs being censored. Now, the reality about this is that Square Enix is simply adopting a legislation that's recently passed in Japan. This law was more geared to protect retail and service workers rather than, game devs who are a little full of themselves, if you will. And so, yes, the law is applicable to them. Yes, it does protect them from what is considered undue reprisal from the public, okay? But what is defined as undue reprisal is pretty clear, okay? So, to understand this a little better, why this law came to be in Japan and how it's come to affect Square Enix is, well, we need to get to the root of it. Well, here we are with rooters, right? No. That was a lame pun. So, the death of a reality show star a few years ago prompted a discussion of a barrier, like some type of legal protective barrier between people who are providing a service, such as media creation, to the public. All right? When we are looking at this, we need to remember that Japan is a different culture than ours. Tatame is a very important practice. And tatame is the practice of being one way in public as opposed to a different way in private. Okay? In public, in Japan, you are expected to behave in a certain way. This is a very happy, cohesive, go along to get along attitude. There are laws in Japan that allow you to shove someone down a stairwell if they are going up the wrong way. This is how seriously social cohesion is taken. Okay? When people fall out of line with that, you end up with events like the hikikomori, where there are, I believe, almost 7 million men in Japan that are no longer participating in the labor force and don't leave the 4 square walls of their primary domicile. And this is longer than 6 months that they have not simply stepped outside to feel the wind on their face. Okay? These are called ikikomori. In Japanese, this means to go inward, okay? It's a very fascinating thing. YouTube is full of all these things, but when people fall out of this sort of society, you end up with that. And you also end up with people who are incapable of negotiating that line in the cyber realm that happens in, right? And so that's what led to this. But again, despite this being the inspiration for this, the law is primarily geared to protect people who are in the service industry. Now, I wanted to bring up this chart right here because it explains things pretty well. This comes from nippon.com, and let's just scroll up to the article title so you can find it if you want to. This is Japan. I said it wrong. I said it the old way. Japan. Those Japanners over there. Japan legislates against the growing menace of customer harassment, okay? And so customer harassment in Japan is very different than how we define it here. Though it looks the same, they don't tolerate the same kind of behaviors that we do, all right? At least they don't anymore. They used to until this law was passed. So let's take a look at that chart again, and we'll go through it, okay? So we call this the vicious cycle of complaint. And so what happens here is a customer is dissatisfied. The customer then complains. A provider then offers a better service to avoid social media shaming, okay? So we're not talking about like a repair shop not tightening the rivets on your tires when you go in to have winter tires put on your car, okay? We're talking more along the line of a restaurant not having pronouns on their menu. These are very simple things that don't apply truly to the goings-on of restaurants, okay? And that's the metaphor example that I'm coming up with. This is not the example of reality, okay? The grievances that customers have with Japanese businesses can range from being completely legitimate, though poorly handled, right? The customer's not issuing those complaints in a manner that's going to get any help done, right? Any help to them. Or these complaints are, fabricated in order to provide the complainer some sense of purpose in life. And so what happens is that a service provider will then offer something new in order to avoid the social media shaming. Again, this is very powerful in Japan because as the culture works, and it's not so much that this is bad, it's just different from ours, okay? I want to stipulate that. But even on these levels of being a cashier, being on these level of working at a place that would be considered like Best Buy, a retail store, or like working as a nurse or working as some person who does not directly have control over the business, right? This person will go back to their boss and say these changes must be made, or these folks are going to put out videos about how terrible this business is because we don't offer this thing we've never heard of. All right. The boss, most of the time, is either handling the guts of the company or overseeing many companies at the same time. All right. So they're not involved necessarily in the day to day. All right. In the average 9 to 5 shift of their workers, they're usually planning other things. Again, different culture. Okay. Different culture. And so the service will then make an alteration. The industry itself will follow this because the threat of social media shaming will then follow through. Now, you may be asking yourself, why does this matter so much? Why do they care so much about these videos? Unfortunately, the double-edged sword, if you'll pardon the pun, with the Bushido is that it requires people to be sort of liable generationally for behavior. So let's say you are shamed as a bad person as a cashier, okay? That reflects back on your family, no matter what they are, okay? And the community reacts to this. They say, oh, well, that's the family that has the bad cashier that I saw on TikTok, that I saw on YouTube, okay? And so thus, the business is less frequented. The family suffers the fallout of the social media posts going viral that shamed the behavior of whoever was involved with this, but it ended up being the business's fault, right? So the industry itself around that will elevate to this new level in order to avoid that happening to them, okay? It really is like a mafia. I'm not trying to lie to you here. It really is like a mafia when you get down to how these certain customers are behaving themselves. And I'm not saying that these are people that are like away, foreigners, for instance, that are doing this alone. But foreigners do push quite a bit of it. Because again, the average Japanese person is obeying tatame. They don't behave in public the way they behave in private. They keep their opinions about things in private, that kind of things. And then you go out into public and you go along to get along. You wear a smile even though you may have a frown on the inside. Again, different culture, okay? That's what I'm trying to illustrate. And so finally, what happens here before the cycle repeats again is that the customer's expectations rise even further. Now, I'm not going to say that this emboldens someone to make more complaints. However, someone sees a complaint being matched, another complaint will be made by a different person. This is not to say that all complaints should be thrown out, but that's why this law is in place, okay? Because it leads to a domino effect. The Japanese people have a social contract, if you will, where everyone goes along to get along, as I said before. When you enter in people that either do not want to respect that social contract or wish to expand it to include behaviors that are not native to it, right? Bad things happen. That doesn't work. The Japanese people are kind of left out in the dust because their primary teaching is to not create a problem in public. Not to create a problem at all, but to not create one in public especially. Again, different culture. Not bad, different culture. That's what I'm trying to tell you. Works very well for them, might not work so well over here. All right, now to give you an example of what's kind of like on the ground level, we have this picture from Facebook. I don't like to go over to Boomer Book to get this stuff, but it was the only place I could find it. And so you'll note here that this is sort of a pop culture shop, what would be the equivalent of a comic book shop, trading card shop here in the U.S., and it looks like they sell manga. It looks like they sell model kits. It looks like they sell all sorts of youth-oriented media here, okay? May not be targeted exclusively at youth, but it is youth-oriented. So here's the list of requirements in English, okay? This is in Japan. Here's the list in English, and it says, request for foreign customers. We are very troubled by the many violations of manners by foreigners. These are bad behaviors. And so the English speaker that made this, or maybe whoever they translated it to, it's a little disjointed, so, work with me on this one, okay, as we go down it. And so, number one, this is a bad behavior. Number one, place the item in your hand in a different location or in a different orientation. They do not want you to do this. They do not want you to do number two, open the package before purchasing the goods. They do not want you to do this. Number three, bringing food and beverages into the store. They do not want you to do this. Throwing garbage inside the store or in the hallways. They do not want you to do this. This one's weird. It reads weird, so bear with me. What they really mean here is don't expect us to speak English. Don't enforce English here. Don't insist upon English, but it says it says most of the staff can't speak English. So they offer a remedy to this, and they say, please prepare an image of what you are looking for and make an effort to speak Japanese. So again, if you don't, you could just pop open the Google Translate, type in what you want in English, then ask it to speak it out loud with the little sound button right there. And you could have the robot voice tell them what you want, okay? It's not great, but it beats having one of these scenes where you're yelling at somebody. And finally, it says the act of requesting the return of an item that was not broken. And they don't want you to do that. And so what that means is like, picture this. You go into one of these stores, you pick out some neat little toy, right? Your neat little toy, and you go outside, you make a video about it, and then you're done with it. You don't need that toy. You didn't even want it to begin with. You just wanted the clicks. You upload that short video, collect your millions of short views, and then what? Well, you return the toy because you don't have a use for it anymore. Well, this company says no. You're not going to do that here. And that's perfectly fine. But that's what they're dealing with, right? So you can see right here what they're dealing with on a day-to-day basis from people from away, English speakers, or people who have a common tongue in English, if you will. Now, again, why is it really that extreme that they have to go passing laws about this? And yeah, I want to show you what's going on over there. And so this is what's going on, just a regular retail thing. And I want you to pay attention to the size of this worker right here. I believe this is a small Japanese woman, judging by the size of this lady. She's about rib height with the countertop where she's working at. And so we'll just take a listen. He's trying to get in there. He's trying to get at her.
私大嫌い日本長い間はセブンイレブン行ってない初めてセブンイレブンのことルール作った
See again.
バカなルールだ
He calls her an idiot.
なんでみんなスタッ
He
フ
says,
頭
what's
使
wrong
わ
with
な
your
い
head?
人間でしょ
I don't speak Japanese. I just know, like, gestures and, like, who doesn't know what baka means, right? They got Hank from Breaking Bad to say sussy baka. Everybody and their brother knows what baka means. I don't speak the language. Don't worry. But you might wonder, what's this man so mad about? Surely there must have been some great offense to make him want to break into the back of the counter and lay hands on this woman. He was asked for his ID when he was trying to buy cigarettes and alcohol. In fact, he really wasn't even asked his ID. He was just asked to state his age. And all that. Now, I want to remind you, this fella is about 4 inches to his hip off the top of the countertop, right? You got the countertop here. Here's 4 more inches, 5 more inches up there, 4 or 5 going right up there to get his hip. Right about here, okay? Dealing with this. He's trying to get in at her right here. Like, this is not okay. This is above and beyond any type of reasonable response. Then we've got this one right here. This, as you can see right here, this is some type of self-checkout line, but... And so these people have a grievance. They have gathered around the counter, and they are yelling at this worker. What is he supposed to do? Tatame demands that he simply take it, and whatever happens, hopefully it's not violent, happens. Not that they're supposed to endure violence, but what do you think happens when these people don't get what they want, when they're already yelling and throwing their arms in the air? You know, and you have this again. You have people... I want to illustrate this one because this is a little more difficult. This comes from Jeffrey J. Hall. This is at Mr. Jeffu over on X. You want to check him out. It says here is the video of a 65-year-old American tourist who was arrested for defacing the Meiji Shrine with graffiti. And so I want to stress this, that even on these religious zones, even in these shrines, even in these places that are protected culturally, the people there are expected to be agreeable and kind, and they're not supposed to get in people's faces. There are, more enhanced protections for behavior in these spaces, right? So if you go into a shrine, you start misbehaving, you can be removed, that kind of thing. You go in there and start haranguing the people who manage the shrine. I don't think it's just exclusive to priest and priestess. I think there's other people there too. I just don't know their titles, and I don't want to assume. So, you're dealing with these people that are either living there, or their heritage has them there to take care of it because it is part of their culture. They are expected to be very agreeable and kind and go along to get along, as Tatame demands. However, you have people like this guy coming in and doing all sorts of horrible stuff. What are they supposed to do? Again, it's a different culture, right? It's a different culture than ours. And finally, I'll show you this example right here. And this is a Chinese tourist that's going around kicking the deer in Nara Park. All right, you see right here. He's kicking him, slapping him across the face. Now, again, you can see the crowd is absolutely in shock. They don't know what to do about this. They're getting out of his way. He's a psychopath to them. Whereas in America, somebody would have probably grabbed him by the throat and chokeslammed him by now over that, okay? So the situation is that there are, again, the people that manage Nara Park, the people that are in the area that are even like guides, are supposed to be agreeable and kind. They're allowed to confront these people, but their level of confrontation is, why did you do that? Not, keep doing it and I will make sure that you don't go back to China. They can't go that far, right? And this law doesn't embolden them to do that. Rather, it makes sure that people like this that are doing this, and when confronted insist that they're allowed to do it because there was no sign that said that they couldn't, these people can be dealt with. This guy back here in a convenience store that was haranguing this tiny person, this guy right here, he can be handled by the law now for this behavior. This is not okay. These people can be processed for this behavior now. These folks that are in here screaming and yelling at this guy in the back, you see him all the way back here trying to do his job. He's got all these people screaming, throwing their arms around at him. It's just a matter of time before it goes sideways. He's now protected under this. As I said at the top, Square Enix has applied this to their TOS, but I have a feeling that this has more to do with them, having these protections for people who want to be hyper aggressive about these things. I don't believe they're going to prosecute or deny you rights to access your game if you happen to not like their censorship. If you post AI art of Tifa having gazanga galoogs, bazongas, whatever you want to call them there. It's not going to get you banned from playing their games. Moreover, this law really applies to people who want to go above and beyond and either start down the road of a physical confrontation or begin issuing these threats. Now, when they specify unreasonable change, to me, that sounds more in the neighborhood of you will pay a price if you censor Tifa's breasts, as in like you personally, developer, will face a personal toll for going against us, versus your job that you did is going to cause the game to not make that much money. All right. And again, in court, that's very obvious what those two statements are and that they are different. Okay. So again, I don't think Square Enix is going to have any legal ability to apply this stuff. However, they are required by Japanese law to feature these things as protections for their employees. So again, you and I may not feel so passionately about this censoring, but there may be someone in Japan that wants to become physical over that, or at the very least persistent in their desire to go after the character designer that created the censorship, to the point where that character designer not only feels singled out, but also not so safe. All right? And again, different culture. Japan's not used to the kind of confrontational language that happens every day on the streets of New York, every day in your town. They're not used to that kind of stuff. Someone walking into the bank and finding out that they don't have enough money and slamming their fist down on the countertop, Pretty normal. Pretty normal around here, you know. Not normal in Japan. That person is a psychopath. That person is very dangerous. That person has gone so far outside of normal behavior that they are now perceived to be a threat to others around them. Again, it is a different culture. And so this behavior is incredibly alarming to people in Japan. I must reiterate, when you talk to a person registering at the cash register, okay, if you wish them a good day or ask them how they are doing, they will be very uncomfortable by this in Japan. They're not stuck up. It's simply in their culture, these things are not efficient, so they're not enshrined. They're not practiced. When you talk to each other at the register, it is simply supposed to be a transactional conversation. Do you like this register worker? Certainly. But this is not the space to be having that conversation about that. You can talk with them when the situation's over with. More than welcome to stand at the counter and speak with them after the business transaction is over with. But when you are checking out, this is not, and especially if you're a stranger. Like you and I, we'll walk into any old Walmart and say hi, howdy doody to people in blue vests that are here to help us. You know, those blue vests, the blue polos, and the khaki pants, right? Hi, howdy doody. How are you today? How's things going here at Wally World? You know, that kind of stuff. Don't know him from Adam, probably won't ever see him again, right? This is very bizarre behavior in Japan. You will be considered someone who is not well in the head, or at the very least, you need some type of guidance. You have been alone too long, you see? And so again, different culture, but this is why that law exists. And it's not here to protect these wackadoodles that want to make sure that you're not allowed to criticize their decisions in the games that they're either remaking or making new games, right? These games are these legal protections are to make sure that people can't be hunted down. You know, they have some type of legal recourse for people who are beyond beyond the realm of safety with their discourse. And they make that very clear that is a space where violence is imminent. Right? Like what I've shown you here. They're not going to get mad at you if you go online and you say, this manga shop has a unreasonable clerk there because he doesn't want to deal with people who don't speak English, okay? That's not a problem. You can say that. What you can't do is, we should burn down this place because this guy doesn't speak English. That's not okay, all right? Now, not that there wasn't protections for that in the law, but currently now there is a protection for the workers inside that may find their homes being burned because they're disagreeable at a workplace where somebody who didn't like them is now enacting punishment on that public behavior in the private zone, okay? Not that that's happened either, but the law is there to protect these people from unwarranted interactions. The law also strengthens stalking laws, it strengthens threats of violence laws, and it strengthens response to violence laws. So again, I have to stress, this has less to do with developers and more to do with your average worker in Japan that's dealing with a new society that's not really, copacetic to them. They're not really comfortable with it, and I can't blame them. Who would be? Look at what they're facing. I would not be comfortable in this situation whatsoever. So I can't blame them for putting these laws in place. And honestly, if there are people reaching out to Square Enix with the intensity we've seen in these videos, cut it out. It's not that bad. You're more than welcome to be mad about him, but there's no reason to be uppity like this at him. The worst that happens is you go play a mod where Tiffy's got huge boobs. That's the worst that happens, man. Nexus can ban that mod, sure, but you can find it. Everybody else does. I'm just telling you, this doesn't have to do with Square Enix so much as it has to do with the people in Japan being abused. So let's try to remember that as a corporation, they're going to try and take every advantage they can to save their butts. But in reality, this law is more about the people. But you'll have to let me know what you think down in the comments below, guys. And as always, good luck out there.